Hello everybody, I'm Andreano Lanusse from Embarcadero Technologies, and I'm here today to present the webinar about the Delphi certification program. This webinar is organized in three major sections. Each one of the sections provide you all the information you need to start the preparation for the certification exam and will help you to become Delphi certified. At the end of this presentation, we have a Q&A sessions where I'm going to be here to answer all of your questions. Let's start talking about why the certification program. When you look at the market today, there's a lot of competition out there, and many of the employers are looking for the most qualified individuals. There's a lot of different ways that you can use to differentiate yourself from other professionals. But all of the employers agree that the certification is definitely a very good way that you can use to differentiate yourself from others. It not just brings value for you as a professional, but bring value as well for the employers, bring value for their organizations. Also, the certification, it's a very important mechanism that we in Embarcadero can use to educate developers. In order to help you to differentiate yourself in the market, we decide to bring back the Delphi certification program. And this new Delphi certification program, it's organized, it's offered in two different levels, the developer and the master developer. You can start become Delphi developer certified and move forward and become a master developer certified. If you think you are already prepared to go directly to the master developer, you can go and take the master developer certification without passing the developer certification. If you get the master developer, you are definitely part of the elite of Delphi developers around the world. In order to start your preparation to become Delphi certified, I would recommend you to start looking the certification center at embarcadero.com/certification. The certification center provides you all of the information you need to know to start your preparation for the exam. At the certification as well, it's available the study guide. The study guide walks you through the information and research that will help you to prepare to take the Delphi Master certification and the Delphi Developer certification. The material includes all the information and is organized in four different sections. The first one is a general review about the exam. The second one, the technical research, which has a lot of recommendations in terms of training, books, manuals, websites, also the test sections. And at the end of each study guide, you will see some sample questions to help you to have some idea what kind of questions you're going to see during the exam. Let's talk about the exam. The exam has 60 questions, each exam, okay? You have 1 hour or 60 minutes to complete the exam. You can finish early if you want to. The minimum score is 80%, which represent 48 correct answer or more. And the questions is presented as a multiple choice question. You can have a single answer or multiple answer. When you have questions which is multiple answer, you will see the text saying choose all that applies for the answer. But I can anticipate that 95% of the questions in the exam are single answer. It definitely makes it easier for you to answer the questions. And if you pass the exam, your certificate is going to be valid for 2 years from the date of achievement. There is one important information related with the exam, which is the moderated versus unmoderated exam. The developer certification is unmoderated. It means you just buy the certification and get your laptop, open your internet browser, and start taking the test. You can be at home, at the beach, at the office. Nobody will proctor you, nobody will watch you during the test. For the Master Developer certification, this exam is moderated. It means you have to schedule an appointment with one of the Embarcadero partners or through the certification centers, and one of the Embarcadero Certification Center employees will watch you during the exam. That's the only way you have to take the Master Developer exam. We know that some countries that we don't have a certification center or Embarcadero partner, we are looking through that for a solution for this specific situation. And in the meantime, if you really want to take the Master Developer, you don't have an Embarcadero partner or certification center at your city, please send an email to certification@embarcadero.com. Explain that you want to take the Master Developer certification, but you don't have a local partner or certification center in your city. We are going to help you to get through the Master Developer certification. You may ask where you can get training and where you can take the Master exam. So here are two URLs for the training partners around the world and for the certification centers. Okay, it's not required to take the training to take the exam. Okay, but if you really want to be better prepared, you want to learn more, I would recommend you to contact one of our training partners and see what trainings they have available that can help you to become Delphi certified. Beyond the benefits to say I'm a Delphi developer certified, what other benefits the certified developers has with the Delphi certification program? First one is the certificate of excellence. You can see here the developer certificate that you are going to receive at the moment you pass on the certification. The same here for the master developer certification. And also, you're going to be able to use the certification logo. You can use this logo in your business card, email, signatures, blogs, resume, and so on. We are going to include the certified developers on the priority invitation list for the beta programs. So you're going to know early when we have some beta, and we are going to ask for your help, and you're going to have access for new stuff that's coming out from Embarcadero. And also, we are going to list you on the Certified Developer Directory, of course, if you authorize that. We are working to have the Certified Developer Directory ready for this year, and soon we're going to communicate all of the certified developers, and we'll ask if they want to be part of the directory or not. Let's talk about the Delphi Developer Certification. I want to make sure in this topic you have all the information you need to start the preparation and become Delphi Developer Certified. First thing is this exam will test your knowledge in programming concepts, in language syntax, program techniques, and database concepts. If you have experience with Delphi, let's say 2 years experience, and know the concepts behind the Delphi language, database development, stuff like that, you probably will pass in this exam. But one of the very important aspects on this exam is you have to understand, you have to know the concepts. I see a lot of developers that learn themselves how to program, but don't know the concepts. Why for example, something happened in some situation that you are creating, for example, a class. Okay, if you don't know the concepts, you probably will not succeed on this exam. You definitely need to know the concepts. It's very important because I always mention that if you know the concept of something, it's definitely going to be very easy for you to move forward in some specific technology you are using. There are 12 subject areas in this exam. As I mentioned before, it's unmoderated. You can take from anywhere, from your home, office, beach, or wherever. And the exam has 60 questions, 1 hour to complete. The minimum score is 80%. Let's start looking how we organize the questions for the developer certification. The first area where you're going to see questions in the exam is the Delphi fundamentals. This section, we ask for the Delphi XZ product capability, you are going to get questions related with the Delphi language syntax, reserved words, how you structure a Delphi program. Maybe the exam asks you how many uses clause can you have in a Delphi source code, for example. And you also will get questions related how to declare procedures, functions, variables, and things like that. The other sections is related with data types, variables, and constants. This is really important because you're not just going through the types like string, integers, double, the primitive types in Delphi, but we're going to ask you about records, enumerators, pointers. You definitely is going to see questions related with Unicode stringer in this section, char, ANSI char, and so on. We are going to include questions related as well with array and dynamic arrays on this section, and some of the new functions in the RTL that allows you to handle a set of characters. It's going to be part of this section too. The next section is the procedures and functions. So we are going to ask you here how you declare, not only how you declare procedures and functions, but how to pass parameters, as a reference, parameters as output parameter, nested functions, nested procedures, what kind of return value can you have in these procedures, may have some questions related with forward interface and external declaration as well. So be ready for this section, and I would recommend you to investigate, to study about procedure and functions, because you may think that because you're all the time declaring procedures and function in Delphi, you know everything, but this is not necessarily true. So go through the documentation, through the technical research, and we are going to provide you on the next slide. We're going to point to you in the next slide, and you definitely will see there's a few things more to learn related with procedures and functions. The next section is classes and objects. So be ready to know how to declare classes, how to instantiate objects, understand scope, inheritance, polymorphism, understand constructors and destructors. Definitely there is a lot of to learn related with class constructors and destructors, not only syntax, but how they work, what you can do with them. That is a new feature in Delphi. I believe we implement that in Delphi 8, which is related with the members, properties, methods, visibility in the class. So you're going to see questions related not only with the public, private, protect, and publish visibility in the class, but also questions related with the new scope visibility, which is strict private, strict protected, sealed, final, virtual, or static. So I would recommend you to really go through this section as well. The other section we have here is the standard routines. So if you are familiar with in your daily programming day, you probably worked with text files. So you use some of the standard routines, the IO routines in the VCL, in the RTL. So you probably will be fine on this section. But I definitely recommend you to take a look, to review that, see how you manipulate your text files, and also how you manipulate directories, because there is a new unit in Delphi, the IO utils, that comes with a lot of new functions that allow you to manipulate directories, files, and so on. The next section is related with libraries and packages. I would recommend you to take a look very careful on this section because we are going to ask you how you create and use DLLs. So we are going to ask you how to avoid circular reference, uh, ask you to understand how works packages, and definitely we are going to ask you things related, for example, what the difference, what you understand about content in requires clause in a package declaration. So it's not only how to go in the IDE and create a package, but definitely understand how is structured the packaging, why you should use runtime package, design package, and things like that. Object interface, that's one of the sections in the exam you should be very, very careful. And so far, I see a lot of developers fail on this section because they think they know a lot, they know about interface just because they have a lot of hands-on on that, but sometimes they miss some important concepts. And you have to be very careful on the questions related with object interface because that is sometimes there's one word that could change the whole answer. So read careful every single question in general for the exam, but especially in the object interface. So we're going to ask you the difference between interface and inheritance, how to implement interfaces, how to implement classes based on interfaces, and also how to declare poor interface in your program. The following sections is related with memory management. So we are going to ask you how to handle memory leaks, uh, how to configure the memory manager in your application, questions related with automatically manual memory management. So it's really important to understand classes in the VCL that has a different behavior when with the memory management. What's happened when you pass self on when you are creating some classes, for example, and what potential areas in the code. The exam is going to show you some code and ask you which line here in this code has a potential memory leak, has a potential to get some memory leak. And also, we are going to ask you the difference. It's important to understand the difference between stack, and RIP memory. That's other question related with this section. Another section is the generics, attributes, and anonymous methods. This is, I believe, it's new for almost developers because we just implement in the latest version of Delphi the support for generics, attributes, and anonymous method. But the very important point here on this section is to understand how to declare, how to use these three aspects of the language. And especially related with generics, we are going to ask you what the different types of collections we have in Delphi and when we should use each one. So it's really important. Go in the documentation. There is a new uses on Delphi, the generics.collections, that you have like t-dictionary list, t-object list. Try to figure out and learn what the difference between each one of those classes. The use of attributes, we're going to ask you pretty basic questions on that. We're not going advanced questions in attributes. And also, we are going to ask you how to use anonymous method. That's really important to not only to know how to use, but there are questions in the exam that will show some code for you and will ask you what's the result for this function. And the function is created using anonymous method. So it's really important to understand that. The other section of the exam is the exception and assertions. Most of the time, we are all the time using exception in Delphi. And just because you use try exception, the exception handle block, you may think that you know everything about exception. That's not true. I would recommend you to really go through this section and try to understand not only the try except code, but how you raise exception, how you raise exception, how to work with silent exception, what the difference between, for example, normal exception in the abort procedure, things like that is really important in the exam. We are definitely going to ask you about that. And the latest section in the exam is the database concepts. It's important here to remember that we are not asking you in the developer exam about some specific database technology in Delphi like DBO, DB Express, Interbase Express, for example. We are going through here the basic database classes in Delphi like T dataset, T fields. It's really important to understand the events on dataset and T fields, when they happen, what sequence it's going to happen, some specific events. For example, in the T fields, you should really know what's going on those classes, because if you understand this class, you definitely will understand how works the database development in Delphi. So there is a number of questions on this area. And also, you should understand methods. For example, the exam may ask you what the difference between insert and append record method in T dataset. So you should understand what the different behaviors we have in these two methods, for example. And there is other methods that the exam is going to ask you, and we'll ask you about what the different behaviors you see on this area. Now that you know how the questions are organized in the exam, it's time to know how to get information that will help you prepare for the Delphi Developer Certification exam. On the study guide, that is on the Developer Certification Study Guide, page 5, that is the technical research topic, which include all information for different technical resources you need. You can choose go through all of them, or you can pick one or two and start the preparation for the exam. The first one I would mention is the training partners. We have a lot of training partners all over the world that will help you, give you training that will prepare you for the certification. In terms of documentation, I would say the Delphi documentation, which is part of the product, or you can access online through the docs.embarcadero.com, has everything you need to start the preparation. When you look at the study guide, you see that we organized the online documentation. We reference 4 different links for the documentation. Go through those links and read, practice, and you probably will be prepared for the certification. Also, there is a number of different books that I recommend you as well. So there is books from Bob Schwartz, Marco Cantu, and we mentioned 5 books that you should go through, especially for the new stuffs in Delphi, things related with Unicode. It's really important to know those books. If you are Delphi XZ, Delphi 2010 users, you have for free the Marco Cantu book on the registered user area, and I just recommend you to go there and grab these books. Also, we mentioned another resource with some Delphi program websites. That is delphiabout.com, which has a lot of information. The delphibasics.co.uk, which is really, really good. The Code Gear Guru, which has a lot of Delphi tutorial videos, I would recommend as well. And there are other websites that we mention on the stud guide. The latest one, I'm gonna give you here my blog link, as you can see in your screen, and I'm posting certification tips almost every week that will help you to prepare for the certification as well. I'm not giving answers on my tips, but I'm giving you guides what you should study when mention as well some of the important attentions you have to have in some of the areas of the test. So you can access this link as well. Let's move to the Delphi Master Developer Certification. The Delphi Master Certification is the highest certification in the Delphi certification program, and in this exam, we are going to test your advanced knowledge in Delphi programming. So there's a questions related with software architecture, and we are going deep on the questions in the Delphi capabilities in this exam. As the developer exam, this test is organized in 12 subject areas and it's moderated by partner. It means you have to schedule your exam through one of the Embarcadero partners and they will monitor you during this exam. It's 60 questions, 1 hour to complete, and the score required for this exam is 80%. How we organize the questions on the master exam. The first section is the Windows concept, and in this section we are going to get questions related with the Windows API, Windows registers, and also messaging handler. So it's really important to understand what kind of message we use on the Windows API for different situations. We are going through all of these questions in the Windows concept. The second section is related with the Delphi XZ interface configuration. And in this case here, we have a lot of advanced questions related with the use of the IDE, questions related with the code editor, live templates, how to access and manipulate some of the IDE areas. You're going to get questions here related with build configurations, how to integrate it and use the debugger in the IDE, and also questions related with the model view and audit same matrix. The following section is the Delphi VCL. So we are going through the use of the VCL components and also the VCL classes. It's really important here to understand the hierarchy of the VCL, the use of visual and non-visual components. We are going through questions related with the RTTI, exception handler, and classes, and also there's questions related with regular expression, which is one of the new features in Delphi XZ. So the next section is the work with components. Here we are going through the basic components on the VCL. We are going to ask about the properties, methods, events, how to use and create some of these components. You're going to get questions related with action list, and also component templates. Another important part on this sections, we have some questions related with the interaction between the VCL components. The next section is the Delphi language and object-oriented programming. Here I would say there's a lot of advanced questions, and like we have in the developer exam, questions related with polymorphism, inheritance, interface, things like that. In this case here, we have advanced questions. So we are going to see a lot of code, a lot of questions that bring some code, and those codes has we have some questions related with the behavior of this code. And this code, some of these codes bring polymorphism, bring encapsulation, abstraction. So you need to understand, you need to know how to read this code and see what's going to be the result, because the answer probably is going to be like, the question is going to be like, what's going to be the result for this code? And we use some of these concepts on the code, and you should be able to interpret this code. Nested types as well. how to invoke constructor, destructors, what the behaviors on that situation. Class scope, a class member visibility, it's one of the things we are going to ask here, okay? And that is questions related with the Delphi compiler directives, include inline, deprecated, platform, reintroduce, and should be able to know how to use that and what that means. The following section is the common database techniques. The section we are going through the basic class for database access, but at this time we are going through the DBGo technology, Database Express, and DB Express as well. So we are going to ask you here how to access these components, how to use the data access components, how they work together, and of course, in all of these questions using its advanced questions. We are going to ask you here as well about the database metadata. It's important to know how that thing works with the Delphi components and questions related with SQL. There is a separate section about the DB Express, and here we are not just going through the DB Express components, but we are going through the DB Express framework. So it's really important to understand and to know the DB Express framework. We're going to ask you about advantages and disadvantages of unidirectional data sets, when you should use, when some of the components return you unidirectional data set, what you should do to use this cursor as a bidirectional data set, things like that. How to deploy the DB Express application, it's one of the questions we're going through. How works the database transactions and the metadata operations in DB Express, it's related with this topic as well. Questions related with the use and configuration of the T-SQL connection component. It means you have to know how works the dbx drivers.ini and dbx.connections.ini files. The following sections related with DataSnap, and here I would say if you read the Bob Swart ebook about DataSnap development, you definitely will learn everything about DataSnap. I'd say almost everything, and you'll be ready to pass on the DataSnap section. So all kinds of questions in the DataSnap related with the architecture, the memory management, how to use a callback with DataSnap, how to send and receive objects, and what the relationship between the Delphi objects and JSON in the DataSnap, connection pooling, the use of filters. It's so important to understand and to know how the DataSnap fields works in DataSnap. And it's important as well to differentiate the behaviors in DataSnap native server when you don't have REST interface and when you have REST interface. So there's questions related with that as well. The following section is the writing DLL and package. So here we go through more advanced topics in terms of how to write DLL and package. You have to know what the difference, the requirements for writing effective DLLs, how to access global data in DLL, how to deploy runtime package in DLL, understand the use of the Zyme in runtime package, how to avoid circular reference. Some of the sections that we are looking here, you say, oh, we have this section as well in the developer. So maybe we have questions from the developer exam in the master developer exam. No, you don't have this situation here. The questions in the developer is not part of the master developer. It's a completely different set of questions. Component design basis, this is another important section in the exam, and I recommend you to study. You should know how to write components, how to create components in Delphi. You should know how to create and how to extend the existing components. Uh, we are going to ask you about how to write a property or component editor, how works the mechanism for method notification in Delphi, difference and how to create visual and non-visual components. We are going to ask you how to add new components in the two palettes and how to hash this component as well. So you should know how to create and extend the components and understand the basic class in the VCL when it's more appropriated to use one class, VCL class, than other VCL class. Internet programming, here we have questions related with web broker, questions related with web services, SOAP, REST, types of the web service application like ISAPI, CGI. Again, we have questions related with JSON here and how to debug a web server application. The latest section on the master exam, it is the working with XML. So in this case here, you should know how to use the XML component in Delphi, the XML data binding, and also understand the concept behind the XML. So you should understand DTD, XSD, XDR. So everything that involves a XML file structure, you should know, you should understand how works the XML namespace, and also interaction between XML and client dataset. So that pretty much the 12 sections we have for the master exam. What are the technical resources available that will help you prepare for the Delphi Master Developer Certification exam? The first is, again, the training partners. The training partner has a lot of advanced trainings that definitely will help you to be ready for the for the exam. The second one is the online documentation. I would say go through all of the subject areas I mentioned before in the documentation. The study guide contain a link for all of the documentation. And if you don't want to use the online documentation, you can download the documentation to your computer and use that offline. Books, there is a number of different books from Bob Swart, Kerry Jens, Marco Cantu that definitely will help you on the certification. Also, a Kate Wood book about the XML. Specific about the books, that is a book, the Delphi XZ Date Snap Development Essentials by Bob Swart, which I can tell you, if you go through this book, you will learn almost everything about date snap, and you will be ready to answer, I would say, all of the questions in the exam. The Kerry Jensen book about client data set, it's everything you need for the questions related with client data set for sure. Bob Swart as well has a book about XML, SOAP, and web services. That's definitely going to help in the internet programming. Marco Cantu has his handbook collection, which is definitely will help in many different areas, especially in the Unicode, generics, anonymous methods in the exam. And there is other books that I can mention here, the Delphi Developers Guides to XML, the Delphi for Win32 VCL database development, that's definitely going to help you. Other websites, there's a number of different websites, and I will include on this website the EDN, our Embarcadero Developer Network, which has a lot of information that you can use to be prepared for the exam as well, and other websites that you can go through these websites on the study guide. So the study guide has all information you need, as I already mentioned before. And also, just to finalize the technical resource part, the certification chips, where I mentioned before on my blog, that is a certification chips, and I'm going to start publishing chips for the master certification as well pretty soon. At the moment you think you are ready to take the exam, the Master Developer certification is only $149. You can just schedule it. You have to schedule your exam, the master exam, with one of the Embarcadero partners or certification centers, and just go and take your exam. It's only 3 steps. So the preparation, I would say, the preparation for the Delphi Master Developer exam is definitely take more time than the developer, and you have different ways. You can just study at home if you want. You can have a meeting with your local user group and start preparing your local user group to take the exam. Definitely, this is a very nice way to start studying. Or you can take a training with one of our partners if you want. At the moment, if you are prepared, you just contact the certification center and schedule your exam. All of the Embarcadero training partners are certification center. Okay, and at the moment you schedule, you take your exam, and good luck, and I hope you pass you become a Delphi Master Certified. I'm opening now for Q&A. I just want to thank you, all of you that attended this webinar. You have my contact information on the screen, my Twitter, blog, and the link for the Certification Center. If you have any questions after I finish this webinar, please send me a message. I will be more than happy to reply. Thank you.